the Indian economy, relative to the global economy, how has it evolved?
I think the real impact of liberalization actually came in about 96. If we didn't have Dr. Manmohan Singh, I shudder to think what we would have had, honestly. A lot of us at that time criticized him, saying, why is he not opening up more? Then came the Asian crisis. FIs came in, FDI came in, export markets opened up. The biggest push for India at that time was the IT industry.
Mm-hmm.
India had a huge number of English-speaking people, so the entire IT industry boomed. Today, it's one of our most progressive industries. Telecom industry boomed. We actually went with the late mover advantage. This was one industry which proved where you have little government interference, you can see where an industry booms. We had challenges at that time of labor reforms, land reforms. We were too regulated, like you said, we were a closed economy. The Indian economy has been growing since then at about 6 to 7% for 30 years. One of the causes of India's growth was the women participation in the workforce.
The economic changes also bring about social changes.
Yeah.
Some bold measures were taken in the early 90s for sure. So now let me ask a more present day question, because we've talked about where the Indian economy started and where we are today. And one of the favorite things that I like talking about in international audiences especially is, do you think, when I personally look at it as there is a moment of huge opportunity for India right now, because one way to look at it is that we have ridden a particular course. And, China had it, for example, they had 20, 30, 40 years of continuous growth. We didn't quite have, necessarily the same kind of growth for sure, but we also enjoyed continuous growth. And maybe some people are making an argument that India is going to slow down now, which obviously is a slightly alarmist view in my, in my view, that's a little alarmist. So do you, on the other hand, think that now, given the particular geopolitical situation, do you see, for example, there is obviously this tendency or intent to move away from China. US has started doing that over the last few years quite clearly. US-China relations have continued to go downhill. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a very opportune thing maybe for some countries like India. I also think Southeast Asia can benefit from it. So, the US itself and China are not aligned as trading partners. So they are both looking elsewhere, and there are opportunities. Of course, India's position with China is also similarly a little fractured. So I'd love to get your views on, so what should India do here? Should we be opportunistic and say, hey, US partner with us? Or B, should we say we should try to do business with China as well? Because as recent history has shown us, China has suddenly pulled a rabbit out of the AI hat, by coming out with DeepSeek. So what do you think is the strategy that India should adopt here?
So one of the big challenges we faced when we opened up the economy, we did make a statement that we want to, manufacturing should be 25% of the GDP. Never achieved it. Correct. And not achieved it even today. In fact, it's gone down even more. I think you hit the nail on the head. People never look at this opportunity of India-China coming together. I think you raised it. I think it's very good. My view, if India wants to get onto the manufacturing scale, China is their best partner. I'll tell you why. Because China cost of labor has gone up. India's cost of labor is still manageable, still good. I'm talking from a lower cost. And India can do a lot of the heavy lifting manufacturing which China will find difficult to do.
Okay.
So India can actually create a lot of jobs, and these will necessarily not be skilled work. It could be unskilled workers doing that kind of manufacturing. But what are you doing? You're creating jobs, you're creating economic activity, and you're trying to balance the payment. The balance of payment. So I think there's a big opportunity. And I think one should not shy away from it. Now with all this anti-China, somebody will say, why are you suggesting this? So this is one part of the story. The other part of the story I can see is that as people move out of China, their natural ally should have been India. But unfortunately, it's not been India. It has been Vietnam, it has been other countries, Indonesia, Mexico, we've gone everywhere, So India's got some part of it, but did not get the major part, because at that time it was felt that all China will close down and everything will come to India. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it won't happen also, because
That's too simplistic.
Yeah, too simplistic.
I agree.
And there's a lot of unwinding to be done at the China end also. So, so I think, but we are seeing some benefits of it, like Apple moving their assembling unit to India.
Right.
They do a lot of Apple phones are now assembled here. We're getting into chip manufacturing. We're getting into, unfortunately, despite having a booming IT industry, we never went for R&D. We never went to build our own products.
Okay.
Which we could have. We could have had the Chat GPT. We could have Chat GPT. That company was almost bought by Vishal Sikka when he was at Infosys. So, but the board rejected it. So India could have got a lot of these, and we never built any AI products. AI products means the big ones. So yeah,
For that matter, any products, right? I mean, the focus has been more on services.
Yes.
And I'm not blaming them, because it's the easier, lower hanging fruit. But you're right. At some stage, we have to go for the slightly more complex solution.
So I think manufacturing, we have to go because it creates job, it creates direct, indirect jobs. You see, in a downturn or when there is economic issues, you need to have something that you manufacture. And you're dependent upon on a very disrupted supply chain. And that's where the challenge is going to come. If Middle East during COVID, I'll just give one example, they said, we are so rich, we've got everything in the world, we don't have food. So if everything gets closed out, what will our people eat? There's nothing to eat. So they went now agriculture on deserts using Israeli technology. They are putting that at scale. So I think that's the way India should look at. I think what we need is a repeat of 1991, but with very different kind of reforms, the tougher reforms, like you very rightly said, the tougher reforms, and we need to go about it. Few years, we all can go through a challenge, but it will benefit the country quite a lot.
Absolutely. No, that's very, very valid point. And I would say that considering the current government has been re-elected for a third term,
correct,
I would say it's a historic opportunity
yes,
to make some very bold, reformatory moves, which can impact for the next 20 years and positively.
Absolutely.
I also think it's an opportunity for the current government to push that. Now, obviously, China we've talked about. It has bothered me as much that the whole US-China thing has not benefited India as much as it should have. So that's an interesting explanation for that. And I have been similarly sort of disappointed that India has not been able to tap as much into this opportunity of the US and China geopolitical situation. And like we discussed, the opportunity went to some of the wrong and not necessarily well-placed candidates, whereas India should have been the most logical candidate in my view. And I think some of that may be also because of some of our laws. We have exchange control laws, which people are very paranoid about. Also, our currency has been a little on a slide. I mean, those are factors, I think, which... do you think those are factors that will continue to be of concern from an Indian market viewed from an economic standpoint?
So I think we have some really, I think the way I would look at it, if I had to advise the government, and I would tell them, I would say scrap all the laws, rewrite the laws for a modern economy.
Right.
Because these are coming from ages, some of them are 200 years old, some are whatever, and they keep getting used or misused, And secondly, the other thing which I find is the Indian government, they're just too control freak on the industry. They don't trust the industry. I think you need to let them go, let them do their business. If somebody's done wrong, punish it, but doesn't mean that you start stopping their growth. And I remember, because I was involved a lot in the ease of doing business with Amitabh Kant and all this. And so people came and told me, this is all good what you're doing, but on the ground, we're having some serious challenges of setting up a company. and the permissions. India also has issues around corruption, which all growing economies have, but that also needs to get dealt with. That's a big elephant in the room, and I think we need to deal with it. Secondly, I think the the way I would look at it is, if we change the laws, our GST laws are very onerous, and they are actually, when I look at it, it's more like a consumption-based tax. So, 1960s or 70s, I know this was explored whether a consumption-based tax should come in. And economists said, no. This is the economists saying. They're saying, no, it is not good for an economy. So I think we need to relook at some of it, because we made the country very expensive in terms of through taxes. And so I think some of these can get done. Indian rupee will always be a challenge because of how our economy is structured. And I think if we become less dependent upon oil, which we are not at the moment, and also we create our own manufacturing, I think some of the rupee dollar will go. I don't know where we are on the BRICS currency, but I think China has already moved their currency. I just heard they did some trades on it. They are bypassing the SWIFT system. So we don't know where all this is going to go. But if this goes, the dollar will be weakened. Indian rupee will then, find its base. But just to answer your question, I think this is India's decade. This is India's decade. And if we don't get it, and we need to get act together, however.
Absolutely.
And we have got one big challenge besides all what we just discussed is on the agricultural sector. We need some severe agricultural reforms. We need to get people off land and move them to doing other activities, but in the rural area, not bringing them into cities. And I think that's something which we need to work on. So we need to bring some very serious reforms in agriculture. What is going to help us is going to be technology. Fortunately, we're sitting in an area where technology, this artificial intelligence, it will be able to create productivity. It will be able to, spread things much more than what we can do as single. And like you said, when you were trying to find out which laws, today it's the press of a button, you can find out, okay, got whatever. You go to any of the artificial intelligence sites. So I think we are sitting at a golden moment, I would say. And fortunately, we have a democracy, a functioning democracy. We have a good legal system with few faults, but it's a good legal system. And so I think these are things which people look for, and people will come back to India. Investors will come back. See, they go where they can make money.
Sure.
If they feel, the problem what has happened is most investors came here, rupee got devalued, or the dollar became stronger. So all the gains they made got lost. So it was not exactly the way it is.
So it's, everything looks jaded after you account for forex losses and taxes.
Yes, taxes.
So that's the other thing, capital gains taxes, which also, But that's fair. And I think, a lot of people are very curious about India. They're very excited about India. But equally, they hear stories like this from others who have, lost some money because of forex losses, because of, and also our exchange control laws have some restrictions on how you can structure deals. So all those things come in the way of actually implementing some of these deals. What do you think is geopolitically the opportunity or threat for India here?
We were not a very major economic part till 1991, but we were always a non-aligned country.
Do you think India, should be pursuing Ukraine as a new ally?
There's opportunity in infrastructure build out.
The infrastructure sector of India has become a huge strength.
I think India will play a pragmatic role. So I think it's a golden opportunity.
What are some of the ways in which India can look to mitigate the effects of these tariffs?
I think there will be a give and take negotiation. There's also a trade agreement which is getting worked out with the US. India is a consumption-driven economy. The Americans need this market to sell their goods. Tariffs have never been good.